everyone, welcome to this edition of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Dominic Aragon here. Kind of a little flip-flop reversal here. Tyler Jones joining us on the show today too. But Tyler's on the road this week, and I'm taking a rare home weekend. Tyler, thanks for joining us this week.
Always, Dom, and thanks to you for guiding the ship, if you will, this week, so I can make it home and visit my family this weekend, go to a wedding and all that in Oklahoma. But we have plenty to discuss on the show as Joey Logano gets it done this past week, gets back to victory lane, clinches a spot in the championship four. Also looking ahead at this weekend's race at Homestead-Miami, and we've seen some great racing there over the years. Dom, let's start with Logano's win. I mean, what a turn of events, right? I mean, just what was it? A week ago, it looked like he was out, and then Alex Bowman has the penalty where he gets bumped out. Logano gets put in, and now he's in the championship four. That's just how unpredictable this playoff is. One moment you're out, the next moment you're competing for a championship.
Tyler, I feel like 20 years from now, if there's like a drinking game or some sort of trivia question, it'll relate back to no matter what Joey Logano does this year in his championship quest. Who does Joey Logano have to thank most for his championship four appearance? I don't think it'd be Team Penske. It would be Alex Bowman and Hendrick Motorsports for failing that post-race inspection last week. But nonetheless, Joey Logano getting it done in Las Vegas. Tyler, we've been there where we have seen that Team Penske just seems to have that place figured out. Logano got his fourth win at Vegas, fourth with Jimmy Johnson. Those two are now the all-time Las Vegas winners in the NASCAR Cup Series. And Logano now with 35 wins, Tyler, 25th all-time on the NASCAR wins list. But when you really put that number into perspective, that's one win shy of an entire NASCAR Cup season. So in all the existence that Joey Logano has had, 15 years in racing in NASCAR, he's won pretty much the equivalent of a full NASCAR Cup Series season.
I care less about the win total right now. What I care about is the championship stuff. And for him to be in that championship hunt without being, with almost being eliminated like that, to me, it's just remarkable. And Penske's had speed all season. And so you think about it, like going to Phoenix in a couple of weeks, Dom, it's not out of the realm possibility. We could be talking about Joey Logano taking home the NASCAR Cup Series title. Ryan Blaney did it last year. Just what a wild story that would be. And getting this win here, you go to some favorable tracks here in the next couple of weeks. Watch out. We got to take that 22 team and their championship chances seriously. And to be honest, they haven't really been much of a championship threat for much of the season.
No, they sure haven't. And he said it best in his post-race news conference with the media, how they have now earned that privilege to not have to worry about Homestead or Martinsville and just focus on their Phoenix car like they did in 2022. They did the same thing in 2020, Tyler, where he won at Kansas and propelled him to the championship four. We were there for that race, 2018 at Martinsville. And he's been the champion now two out of the last three championship appearances. He's got those even years figured out if you're a numbers guy. But I agree with you, Tyler. You look at the numbers, they're very telling. 3 wins, 6 top fives, 11 top tens. There's 5 drivers that have scored double-digit top fives. Logano's not going to hit that this year. 300 laps led, 17th average finish. Ryan Blaney was a tick better than that last year. But when you look at the numbers, it's just they don't look like championship caliber numbers, Tyler. These look like 10th to 12th place point standings finish numbers, but this is the format we've lived in, and it seems like Team Penske has really figured this out.
Yeah, they have. And I think that, you look at this championship format, and I know some people hate it, some people love it, but it's exciting, and that's what NASCAR wants at the end of the day. And, I look at Logano, Dom, like, NASCAR wanted a true playoff, right? And you look at in almost every sport, the champion that wins in the playoffs isn't always the best team. It's the team that gets hot at the right time at the end of the year that wins that title. And Joey's done this before where he wasn't necessarily the best driver all season, but he was able to win when it mattered. And for me, like, let's say that Joey gets it done and wins the championship at Phoenix, which very well could happen. I'm not going to sit here and say he's not a worthy champion, because you still got to put it up when it matters. And if they're putting up these performances with their playoff hopes on the line, I mean, that's just clutch moments that NASCAR's been wanting to see.
Certainly so. Certainly so. We've had this format 11 years now. They've been able to figure it out. It seems like they have the most championship four appearances of any driver, any team at 6 now. And again, all in those even number years. So we move now to the NASCAR Cup Series playoff grid. And we're going to look at the Xfinity and Truck Series here in a few minutes too. But Tyler, let's start there with Cup. Joey Logano locked in. He can finish last the next 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. That 22 car is going to race for a championship. But this is where it gets interesting. You look at the point breakdown. Christopher Bell, plus 42. Kyle Larson, plus 35. William Byron, plus 27. And then the cut line below there, Denny Hamlin in 5th, minus 27. Tyler Reddick, the regular season champion, minus 30. Ryan Blaney, last year's champion, minus 47 points. And Chase Elliott, minus 53 points. Your immediate reaction as you hear the playoff grid, where everybody stacks up heading into Homestead?
You know, it's interesting because there's certain guys, Dom, I feel like it'd be hard to imagine not being in the championship four. Like, you know, you mentioned Christopher Bell, how high he is in the point standings. Kyle Larson has been the best driver all season, and he's won some playoff races as well. William Byron's been very good. But there's going to be some guys that are left out that are going to be shocking. And that's what I wonder. I wonder if, I feel like those are the three that we feel like probably are the most likely to advance. But you got to be on your A game the next couple of weeks. And there's only going to be, you know, 2 spots that can be locked in by wins the next 2 weeks. And, you know, if Joey or somebody wins 2 races here, then that obviously takes away the opportunity to lock spots and all that. But I'm wondering if somebody's going to play that spoiler dog role and make life not so easy. If we see one of those guys potentially knocked out, can we see, you know, Chase Elliott find his way? Can Alex, you know, we see Denny Hamlin potentially here. I mean, I think these next couple of weeks, we would be naive to think that we know what's going to happen here the next couple of weeks.
Las Vegas certainly showed that, where you have 4 drivers with some sort of issue, the crash, the Tyler Reddick flip along the front stretch. And it also highlights, too, how important not only we have those playoff points they've accumulated through those first 32 races, but also stage points that you accrue through a race as well. Denny Hamlin and company, yes, they finished 8th. They didn't pick up any stage points. Tyler Reddick picked up a stage win before that flip. And to his benefit, there's only 3 points behind Hamlin where it's all stacking up now. So stage points are going to be of the essence this weekend and next weekend at Homestead-Martinsville. Up to 40 more points that you could earn in addition to where you finish. So it'll be very fascinating to see. Who do you think of all the guys that are behind right now, who has the likelihood, if they don't win, to at least make up ground on that cut line?
You can't count out Denny Hamlin. I feel like Denny is going to lay everything out on the line. He knows that these opportunities are limited for him to contend for a championship. The clock is ticking in that front. And, you know, you go these next 2 weeks, Homestead, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's never won there before. And then Martinsville, of course, one of his home tracks. He's been very good there in the past. I think that Denny and so we'll talk about that later as well. I think that he's got a message to send. He's got a statement to make. And, I mean, the thing with him that I think that's different for some of these other drivers is I think Denny's got a what do I have to lose approach. Like, F it, let's just go for the guys, you know, as they're contending for championships for some of them the very first time of their career, might be a little bit more nervous and, you know, and all that. Like, Denny's already accepted the fact that he may never be a NASCAR Cup Series champion. And, you know, the fact that he's so nonchalant about it, I think that should be scary for everyone else.
Nothing to lose mentality. And by the way, he is a three-time Homestead winner, winning there in 2009, 2013, and 2020.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but
Thank
but
you.
but yeah, no. But yeah, he's dangerous. Denny Hamlin has certainly nothing to lose with that sort of mentality. Let's move on and talk Xfinity. Speaking of guys that maybe haven't had the strongest year, but did lock in themselves to a playoff or a championship spot, I should say. AJ Allmendinger picking up that first win and ending that desert drought, if you will. He's the only driver locked in. When you look at the rest of that playoff grid, Tyler, Justin Allgaier plus 32, Cole Custer plus 16, Chandler Smith is plus 8, and then Austin Hill minus 8, Jesse Love minus 13, Sam Mayer minus 23, and then Sammy Smith minus 63.
You always wonder, all right, can he get it done on the ovals? And we've seen from AJ this year, you know, he's contending on these oval tracks. I think I would argue, Dom, that AJ right now is the best he's ever been as a race car driver with how well-rounded he's become he's so much better in the ovals than he was at one point. He's competitive at these restrictor plate tracks as well, in addition to the road courses. AJ is going to be very tough to beat.
Sure. Of all those guys below the cut line, in your opinion, Austin Hill, Jesse Love, Sam Mayer, and Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith, by the way, in a virtual must-win position if he doesn't pick enough points up at Homestead. But of all those guys, who do you think makes up the most ground this weekend or has a chance to win and silence everybody?
You know, Austin Hill is an interesting one to me. Austin Hill, I think, has, you know, what it takes. He's a very good driver. I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything, and maybe you know something I don't. I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about Austin Hill in the Cup Series next year, because of the work that he's put into the Xfinity Series and winning so many races and being so good the last few years. I think that Austin Hill would love to go out there and compete for, you know, the right to win a championship, keep this thing going, you know, and also prove himself potentially for his future. I think there's a lot at stake in Hill.
Certainly so. And I think he will be spending at least another year in Xfinity with the promise of more Cup races next year. But you got to imagine you're in the prime of your racing career, kind of like how Christopher Bell had said that years ago. You want to move up as quick as you can. You do it right, but you also want to be spending your best years running with the best, which I'm sure Austin Hill
feels like it's long overdue with Austin Hill.
Yes.
Like, I mean, he was in trucks for a good amount of time too before he got to Xfinity. And it's like, what are we waiting for? Like, honestly, right now, Dom, like, you look right there at the RCR cam. Does anyone think Austin Dillon's a better driver than Austin Hill right now?
Not me. That's for sure. Let's call it what it is. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would probably feel the same way.
And I don't know what Austin Dillon's future holds. You know, there's talk about him potentially taking over RCR someday, and that might be where his long-term plans are. But I mean, eventually, whether it's RCR or if it's another team, I mean, think about that in the RCR camp too, Dom. Like that colleague team. What the hell is Ty Dillon doing in that seat next year? Why not Austin Hill? He's right there. I understand a lot of it has to do with funding and all that sort of deal and all that. Sure. But, I mean, like Austin Hill, I want to see this dude go out there and compete and get far in this playoff and just make some noise, because that dude deserves a Cup ride, I think.
Yeah, certainly so. And there's only so much time he can spend in Xfinity before he will eventually get passed up. And I don't think that's a talent you would want to pass up. Certainly so. And Tyler, also this weekend, we look ahead and this theme of performing where it matters. And the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series is back in action this weekend at Homestead. They had their race at Talladega a couple of weeks ago where they had their opening round of 8 race. Grant Enfinger taking the win, locks himself into the championship 4, has a chance at redemption for the title. But you look throughout that field with 8 guys left. Corey Heim, your points leader, he has a 30-point cushion. Christian Eckes, a 29-point cushion. And then Ty Majeski with 5 points over Rajah Caruth. Caruth has a 5-point deficit. Taylor Gray sitting with a 13-point deficit. Nick Sanchez, 20 points back. And Tyler Ankrum, 23 points back. So of all those, who makes the most noise this weekend at Homestead in the Truck Series?
Ruth is interesting to me. I think that him getting that win earlier this year and everything was fascinating. He would be kind of the name I'm watching for there. But I think the story of the Truck Series is Corey Heim. That dude has been the talk of the Truck Series this year, and is by far the favorite. You mentioned the points gap that he's got and everything. Obviously, he had to finish the job there at Phoenix, but I mean that guy's got a bright future, and the way that he's run well, and we've seen him get some starts at Xfinity and Cup this year as well. I'm very curious to see what the long-term plan is. If is he going to end up in a 2311 or Legacy expansion car, or does he end up in a Gibbs car someday? Like Corey Heim, I think we very well could see him not only win this championship, but continue and make his case known to be maybe not just a 2311 or Legacy car, but end up in a Gibbs car potentially.
Certainly, and Christian Eckes can't be overlooked too, and what they've done with that Bill McAnally team, and overperforming in my opinion. Tyler, one finish outside the top 10 this year. They look like video game stats. Looking at those two, barring any crazy incidents, we know things can happen at Homestead and Martinsville. I feel like those two are looking very, very good and sitting really pretty for that chance to make that championship four. But as we all know, we're going to have to just wait and see over these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, wait and see, and it's the balance of being aggressive, but also, not being overly too careful too. And that's going to be a challenge for them to take into account over these next couple of weeks.
Absolutely, and we will see how it all plays out. We move on now to our NASCAR news and notes for the week, and we begin here, Tyler, with NASCAR, the Front Row Motorsports, and 2311 antitrust case that is moving its way through federal court. Earlier this week, both NASCAR and the teams had their October 23rd preliminary injunction filings due in federal court in Charlotte. And those documents state that NASCAR has filed their response to the teams and saying that both of the teams essentially can run in NASCAR regardless if they have a charter or not. NASCAR is still moving forward with the plan to run 32 charter teams, and nothing was addressed on the pending sale of the two Stewart-Haas Racing charters. The paperwork, I believe, Tyler had said that nothing was mentioned about the beginning of that process. But NASCAR is arguing that the teams do not meet the requirements for this injunction because they can still compete as an open teams, and any damages that they suffer can be won over and covered monetarily. Go ahead.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. I little phone signal issue there, but George front, like we all know, and you just have to be a moron, I think, to not understand this, that there is such a huge difference between charter teams and open teams. When you talk about finances, purse money, and also when you talk about the guaranteed starting spot and all that stuff there, I see this working out for NASCAR to get this injunction that they're looking for here. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what you're going to see is that, if this carries on through February, that the 2311 and Front Row will get to keep their charters, and then until there's a resolution, go from there. Like, I can't imagine them operating as open teams under these circumstances. It's kind of like, to put it in NASCAR terms, Dom, it's like when you file an appeal and you're waiting on, the decision. The process goes through. That's what I think here, that the legal system, and I'm no legal expert, takes that approach of like, hey, we're not going to take away anything from you until we have our finalized verdict here.
Certainly, and we know these things when it comes to court. I'm no court expert either, but covering a little bit of stuff in the state of New Mexico with news organizations. You see how slow this stuff can move at a state level. And I imagine the federal level would probably have that same type of issue. You got to schedule things out weeks and weeks in advance, and weeks turn to months, ultimately years. So certainly something that's just in its infancy stages as it all plays out. But also, Tyler, piggybacking off this, and I'll toss it to you for more of the nuts and bolts on this, but Tony Stewart and Stewart Haas Racing, that half of the SHR camp, they're certainly ending at the end of the year. They're ceasing to exist. But Tony had sat down with his former driver, Kevin Harvick, on the Happy Hours podcast earlier this week. And he opened up, Tyler, in a very, very open, candid conversation about this whole process and selling the team.
Yeah, he did. It's pretty fascinating. Listen to Tony Stewart. I caught part of it. What Tony was saying was that, with the way the operations are in the sport, with how much teams are relying on sponsorship, that the way they were operating things at Stewart Haas, it just wasn't sustainable. And that he's concerned about the future of the sport and where everything's headed. And he sees a lawsuit going on with 2311 and Front Row. And he's like, yeah, I want nothing to do with that. I'm getting out at the right time. And he also talked about, on the financial side of things, he's like, hey, Team Penske, they got Penske truck rentals backing them up. Hendrick Motorsports has HendrickCars.com backing them up. We just don't have that at Stewart Haas Racing. And we just can't expect to compete at a high level when we don't have that type of backing. And, the thing I hated to hear that, Dom, nothing he said was true. It was just a sad reality. And you look at so many teams that have gone by the wayside over the last few years. That Tony Stewart repeated, except this is on a much bigger.
Certainly so. Certainly so. And yeah, they don't want
drivers. I mean, that's the part that I think just really sucks, is that everything he said was 100% true.
Absolutely. And this isn't the first time we've seen this, maybe not in the next gen era, but as of recent history too, Tyler, a championship winning organization folding. And granted, we did see that with Furniture Row, and those circumstances might have played out a little different, but it all comes down to the almighty dollar here. And certainly just that it just seems like that it wasn't worth keeping that investment going. And I got to admit too, Tyler, it just really seems like Tony Stewart's heart really hadn't been in it the last few years anyway.
Well, let's change it for Tony. He's gotten married. He's got a family. His wife, has got a baby on the way. And, he's doing the NHRA thing now. And we saw him do a lot of broadcasting with Fox. I think that as he's gotten older, he's had different perspective. His life has changed a lot. So, that's what happens. Nothing wrong with that, but
exactly,
he's just a different person than what he was.
He certainly is. Certainly is. And looking this weekend too, Tyler, at the NASCAR race at Homestead-Miami Speedway, certainly a very historic track when you take a look at the sport. They've been racing there since 1999. It was the host of the NASCAR season finale from 2002 to 2019, making a return to the schedule next year, but in the springtime. But nonetheless, a round of 8 schedule stop like it has been the last couple of years. Kyle Larson is your odds-on favorite at plus 300. But looking ahead to this race weekend, are you going odds-on favorite? I know you're a gambling man. Who would you be throwing money down on to win this weekend at Homestead?
It's hard to pick against Kyle Larson at these, mile-and-a-half tracks and Homestead and all that. I feel like I'd be crazy not to take Larson this week, Dom.
All right. No, nothing wrong with going with the odds-on favorite. I'm going with somebody here, Tyler, who's sitting at about 16 plus 1,600 odds entering the race week, and he's won here before, still winless in 2024. But what a proper send-off it would be with that throwback paint scheme to his 2017 title run. Martin Truex Jr. He showed speed at Las Vegas last week. He gets it done this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway.
There we go. All right. That would be that'd be a great story for sure.
It certainly would. It certainly would. And now, Tyler, before we wrap up here, I know this is the segment we do where we answer mailbag questions, but with you being on the road, we think it would be better to not take your eyes off the road and check the inboxes and everything. We want to keep you safe on the road. So we'll open it up here. You ask me something, I'll ask you something. And by the way, we know we got a lot of you listening, and we appreciate you every week. Send us your questions that you'd like to have here on some future episodes. But I'm going to start here with you, Tyler. Actually, I'll flip that around and I'll say, when you're on the road, what is your go-to playlist, whether it be genre of music, listening to podcasts or audiobooks or something else? What is your jam when you're on a long road trip?
So, well, first and foremost, I know that I'm doing this podcast with you, but usually when one of us is on the road, we do tend to call each other. So that's part of it. Is a phone call with Dominic, whether I'm driving or he's driving. We usually check in on each other for sometimes. Call goes on for an hour or so, potentially. So that's usually one. But I do love listening to podcasts. There's all sorts of stuff I enjoy, like from Joe Rogan to all sorts of political shows and whatnot. But I do have a lot of good music, listen to a lot of good country music on my playlist as well. And also keeping up tabs of live sports, if I like trying to keep that game audio going and, with other, games going on, just always something like the car doesn't stay silent for me, Dom.
There you go. Yeah, same here with me, Tyler. Sometimes I'll ride in silence. It's nice to do that, but usually something's on or there's a phone call going on with somebody. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the times Tyler's riding co-pilot with me in those car rides from destination to destination. But when that's not going on, same thing with music, YouTube videos, podcasts, sometimes some audio books as well. But there's never a dull moment in that vehicle, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely so. Dom, so my question for you, here's my question for you. What is your preferred way of travel? Is it by car? Is it by plane? Is it train? Are you an Amtrak guy that it is like this? Is it by cruise? Do you enjoy a good cruise on a boat? Like, what is your preference? If you could choose one, what would you choose?
Great question. My rule of thumb is if I can drive it within 12 hours or less, I'll drive it if it's a destination. But if it's going to be more than half the day in the car, it's worth flying at that point and going through TSA and just getting everything checked and get to your destination a lot quicker. But I got to say, I'm a car trip guy. I love going on road trips. I don't mind driving one bit. You hear all the time, Tyler, about couples that, oh, it's your turn to drive. No, it's your turn to drive. I was telling my wife the other day that I'm surprised we're not at the point where, hey, Dominic, can I drive for once? Because I'm usually just the one taking over and driving. But yeah, usually by car would be my preferred method. Let's say you.
I love road trips. They're certainly enjoyable for me, and but I do love plane rides too. For my approach, Tom, I'll put it this way, similar to you in this sense. Like, if I want to cap my travel at like 5 or 6 hours, and whether that's taking a direct flight somewhere or if that's by car, whatever that sweet spot is, if I can get there in 5 or 6 hours by car or plane, that's my preferred method. If it's faster for me to get there by car than plane, I'm driving. If it's faster for me, if it's within reasonable driving range, I'll drive. But flying, like, I try to catch as many direct flights as I can, which I can do more so now than I ever have before living here in Dallas.
There you go. Living in a hub, you can certainly get away with that. And sounds like a man who is very, very efficient with his time. Tyler, we know you're on the road this weekend. You're heading up home to Oklahoma, but what do the next few days look like ahead of our next show?
So I got to go to a wedding. Cardinal sin of attending a wedding in the fall on a Saturday, which I did for Dominic's wedding. I thought about killing him for that, but I decided not to. YouTube don't come out for us for me saying that. That's not a real death threat. But yes, I'm doing this. A childhood friend I've known basically since birth. A real close family friend. Go to that wedding and see some family up in Oklahoma. Luke Combs says there ain't no love in Oklahoma, but I'm going to a wedding in Oklahoma, so I beg to differ.
There you go.
So that's what I'm doing this weekend. See some family, and then come back to cover the NFL the rest on Monday. So yeah, that's what's on my docket. How about you?
There you go. Every minute accounted for with you, Tyler. I'm trying to make the most of it. Yeah, this weekend here, spending it in New Mexico, spending it home with the family and friends. And in fact, my wife and I were going to celebrate. We celebrated our second anniversary a few days back. So we're going to continue that celebration with nice little lunch in Santa Fe. We're going to go to a spa up there over the weekend. So that'll be a fun little getaway for a little day trip. And then be ready to cover the NASCAR action too as we get ready towards the end of the year. So should be a fun next few days. And next week, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about here on Let's Go Racing. Before we get out of here, Tyler, always a pleasure. Glad you are staying safe on the road, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. And hit us up on social media at Star Podcasts. Email David Star Podcasts. And check out the Studio Soapbox Network. This show, the Jones Sport Coach Knows podcast on all podcast platforms. Dom, I think that means we need to put the checkered flag out on this one.
We got to put the checkered flag out there for this show. For David Starr, Tyler Jones, I am Dominic Aragon. We'll see you after the race weekend at Homestead next week for episode 166 of Let's Go Racing.